welcome to the Forestry England podcast. My name's Bex. I've been travelling up and down the country visiting some of the nation's most beautiful forests and unearthing some surprising stories along the way. This week, it's a season finale. I'm in the Forest of Dean in Gloucestershire, finding out about one of the coolest sports that you can do in the forest, mountain biking.
Yeah, let's do it. Some really nice flowy corners, a couple of rollers, coming into some quicker corners here.
We're going to hear from Dan, Steve and Andy all about trail riding and the importance of volunteering.
I mean, and it's amazing. We're here midweek in a cold time of year on a cold day.
I was warm doing the work a minute ago now.
And of course, we're checking in with our producer Adam for the final time too.
We're going to cycle around the Forest of Dean together.
Now, the Forest of Dean is unlike anywhere I've been before. Countless smaller forests combine into an absolutely huge area. It's been a major site of industry, with coal mining and tramways punctuating the landscape. Designated the first National Forest Park, today the Forest of Dean is a popular destination for all kinds of people, including Dan Cook.
People have ridden in the forest for 30 years or so, and they've taken a lot of ownership and people have got involved. The origins behind Forestry England trails actually started with people building things in their local area, and now have generated, so across Forestry England we've got 1,300 kilometres of waymarked cycling trails.
Wow.
Across 24 trail centres, so distributed all across England. So yeah, enormous numbers of visitors and riders, and ranging from tots on balance bikes right through to 80-plus-year-olds using e-bikes and yeah, everyone in between really. So we've got a huge range of people involved, and I think that the key thing across, and we've got an example here at Forest of Dean, is a really varied offer. So we've got trails that are really accessible and easy, or relatively easy, right up to things that are complicated and require 10,000 hours of riding experience and skill to be able to do successfully. So yeah, there's a big range, and everyone can find something that fits with their aspirations and desires.
It does seem... We're going to use some important terms here that you might need to know. So first up, there are different levels of trail that you can do, and they're all graded on a system.
Most sites, and particularly at Forest of Dean here, we've got 4 levels of trails, 4 different grades, and they are graded by colour. So green is the most accessible, and really family friendly, suits lots of people, and yeah, so that there's green loops and green accessible routes. The next level up in terms of demand is a blue trail. Beyond that is a red trail, which is sort of moving towards advanced. Then a black trail, and then what's called a double black trail, which is really quite niche. You've got to be quite a specialist to be looking at double black trails.
And tell me about some of these names as well, because I can see on the list on the board behind you here, you've got the trail ranking, and these names are incredible.
So there's a lot of history here, right. and Steve, the site manager, will maybe give us a bit more insight in a moment about some of the detail in the trail names. But a lot of the sites have heritage and history behind some of the names. So some of the loops here, we've got a free miners trail, because in the Forest of Dean there was if you lived within a certain area, you could mine the land, and they were called free miners. There's a verderers trail, because there's a history of the land managers being what were called verderers. So a lot of the names here reflect the circumstances of the trails themselves. We've got right up at the top end of the extreme trails, we've got something called GBU, which is referencing the good, the bad and the ugly, which is 3 particular drops which start out okay and become more and more severe as you go on. hence good, bad and ugly.
We're going to speak mainly about blue trails and red trails today, but just so you know, I did take a look at that double black extreme trail, and I can confirm it is absolutely extreme. But before we carry on talking to Dan, it might be worth finding out a little bit more about the Forest of Dean itself.
Yeah, I'm Steve. I'm the recreation manager in the Forest of Dean. So I manage the Forest of Dean Cycle Centre.
Okay, so this is your patch, this is your land, right?
It is, yeah.
Okay.
It is. I spend a lot of time here.
Lovely. So we've been hearing about the trails and about the heritage of Forest of Dean as well. And tell me about free mining. This is something I don't know anything about.
Yeah, so free mining is still active, actually. So it was kind of really popular maybe 20 plus years ago. But effectively, if you were a local forester, like born within the boundary of the Forest of Dean, then you had the rights to basically mine within the Forest of Dean. So there's still a lot of active free mines. There's 2 actually within the cycle centre. So we still have a lot of locals who come up in their pickups and they have the right to take coal away.
So is it important to kind of use that heritage when you're planning the cycling trails as well, in the naming or in the route of it?
Yeah, so we try and bear it all in mind. So with the naming, we do consult locally. So we have our group of volunteers, and then we also consult with a lot of local groups on naming things to try and bring in a bit of that history into the site as well. So I think it's important not to lose that within this just being cycling. And then, yeah, with where the actual trails go, part of it is we try and take in some of the features. So, we've got some really important heritage features within. And as you go around the trails, there will be things that point towards those. But also, obviously, bearing them in mind and avoiding damaging them or building trails in areas that are sensitive.
Yeah, you must have to take a lot of things on board, kind of, the forestry aspect of it and looking after it, but also the people and what they want as well, right? That must be
Absolutely.
quite tricky.
Yeah, it's a bit of a juggle. But we have, so fortunately, obviously Forestry England's a massive organisation. So locally, if we want to build a new trail, we have a lot of expertise kind of on site. So we can consult with the beat foresters who do a lot of the operations work. We can consult with ecologists, with wildlife specialists, and everyone kind of gets to, so effectively the idea is we put forward a plan and then everyone has a bit of a voice on whether that can happen or areas of concern, and then we sort of come to an agreement on what we can and can't do.
So how do you pick where the trails go? Do you, obviously because it's Forestry England, you have to decide, looking at like wildlife, looking at like trees, how everything fits in together?
Yeah, so determining where trails need to exist is based around a whole plethora of circumstances. First of all, things that aren't to do with cycling. So where can people park, where the cafes are, where we can host and locate people. Yeah. Then it needs to be in an area that is of limited environmental impact. We've got biodiversity needs and need to make sure that we're not disturbing particular areas of species or wildlife or ancient trees or heritage factors. So there's lots of reasons why we try and concentrate riding in certain areas and locations. But we've also got locations, some of these trails actually cover quite big areas, or quite big loops of several kilometres if you want to ride for that long as well.
Yeah, you do seem to have you've got a lot of bases covered basically. So if you're feeling like you need a bit more of an accessible route, that's okay as well. Like you say, you've got people on the pedal bikes as well, the little toddler ones.
So families might do blue or green routes. We've also got lots of people who use accessible bikes or adapted bikes, what are strictly called non-standard cycles, so non-standard mountain bikes, and they might be 3 or 4 wheelers. We specifically design trails to enable people on non-standard bikes to be able to use them as well.
And with the trail, we walked past one of the new ones being built, and you're using local products as well, well not products, but local materials, I guess. Yeah,
local materials. So as far as possible, we'll pick up local stone, and it might come from the site or it might come from a local quarry. Obviously, we don't want to transport stone from the other side of the country. There's lots of carbon impacts and so on and so forth. And the reason we use stone for trails is to give them some sort of resilience and some long-lasting sustainability. Originally, back several decades ago, people just would use the existing forest floor, but it just doesn't last.
Yeah.
So putting stone down there and using local stone really helps it last for a long time. And particularly with the volume of users we have, hundreds of thousands of riders riding the trails at every site through the year.
And you've got a lot of volunteers as well who are helping you out on the trail as we speak.
We do, yeah, they're absolutely cracking. So we have Dean Trail Volunteers, one of the oldest mountain biking volunteer groups in the country. They've been established for 20 plus years now. We have a few of the regulars who are still from the original group. And yeah, they do Wednesday and Saturday digs. And without them, we just wouldn't have the infrastructure that we've got here at the moment.
I was surprised at the kind of precision of it all. Obviously the curving and the planning of it, but also like the way it has to be the right, like the sides of it have to be like flattened down because that's the way people are going to cycle down it, I guess.
Yeah, there's a huge amount that goes into it. You know, when you ride a trail, you only really see maybe 2% of the work that goes into it. There's a lot of work goes into the base layers, so you've got your trail surface, but underneath that it has to be a really good draining soil. So yeah, there's a huge amount of thought and effort that goes into it beyond just riding your bike.
Just going through some trees.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you have one in particular that you love? Because you must have to do them quite a lot to check they're all still active and still working quite well.
Yeah, I ride a lot of downhill, so I prefer the downhill trails. So for me, probably ski run is my favourite. And we have a lot of races as well locally. So we have once a month, we have a proper organised race, and they quite often race on those kind of higher grade downhill trails.
And planning the trails seems like quite a skill, right?
Incredibly difficult to do, but it comes from understanding the site, knowing the topography, the shape of the land, and there's sort of methods to manage how people go and direct people and build up really, so people will start with something more accessible, and then the further away people get, the more difficult it can become, the more choices towards more demanding grades, red and black and double black trails can be. So the more accessible trails, the easier level trails, more immediately accessible, and then the more difficult ones, you've got to commit a bit more to going to reach them and achieve them.
So you make all these trails for everybody, and it must be quite rewarding to see everybody actually appreciate them and use them.
It's incredibly rewarding. The thing that drives me from a professional point of view is to actually see the smiles on people's faces when they get to the end of a trail. The most rewarding thing that I can hear in the car park is someone saying, "That was fantastic, when can we do it again?" And that really is the driver, because then we know we've got the job right. You know, we've provided the right trail. They've understood which level was right for them, which grade, and they're wanting to do it again. Fantastic. What more can you ask? And having the different layers, different grade levels, is really important to get that offer right, really.
So you want to see those happy faces?
Absolutely, yeah. The more happy faces, the better, and the more pleased people are to go and do it again, or have a cup of coffee in the cafe, or just experience it. And some people are quite happy, and there's a real volume of riders, a high volume of riders that go out, and the value of them riding is being in the forest with friends, with family, having a real social experience. It happens to be on bikes. Fantastic. That's great for us, and it's great for them. And the experience of being in a forest and riding through a forest is really quite a unique experience. It's really visceral. The people are sort of exposed. They're out in the outdoors. They're feeling the wind in their face and the air in their face, and getting an enormous amount of well-being from being in the forest. And yet they're sort of enclosed and comforted by the trees and the canopy, and feeling comfortable with being in this sort of environment. It's sort of wild, but not super wild, within people's comfort levels. So having that range of experiences and within the forest environment is fantastic.
Do you have any plans for the future with cycling in the Forest of Dean in particular?
Lots of.
Yeah?
So the next project we're working on is going to be a green accessible trail. So this will actually be the scoop because it hasn't been announced to the public just yet.
An exclusive.
So, yeah, an exclusive. So it'll be a green accessible cross-country trail. So it will be basically for kids on balance bikes, it'll be for people on adaptive bikes, for families that want to come and try mountain biking kind of for the first time but don't want to just ride around a fire road. So it'll give you that sense of, going off into the woods and that feel. So that's the next project, but there's always big plans in the pipeline.
In just a moment, we're going to speak with Andy. Andy's been leading an army of volunteers in the construction of a brand new trail. I mean, it's something you can ride on right now.
But first, it's my turn. We've used some pretty clever tech this season, from ultrasonic microphones to detect the sounds of bats overhead, to turning tree rings into music. I thought that we would take it back to basics for the final episode of this season. One of the things that we've been using to record all of these episodes are tiny little wireless microphones. Normally, when we record, I'm stood right next to Bex and Dan or Andy or Steve, whoever she might be talking to. And so we've never really got to test how far away you can take them. I clipped some microphones onto Dan and onto Steve so that they could go for a ride and we could hear them. So here they are, riding one of the Forest of Dean's many cycle trails.
So we're just here at the top of the Verderies Blue Trail with Steve, the site manager, about to head down the first part of the downhill. Nice bit of blue trail with lots of berms and bends. So it's a really nice section.
Ready to go? Let's have it.
Round the first corner, over a little hump, next corner, and another hump. Whoa, there we go. Right, so it was a little bit lumpy, that one, and a big one, and last bump. I'd probably do that again, but without being breathless. It's the top of the hill. Yeah. He's got an e-bike. It's all right for him.
Cool. You go. Just dropping into Verderies. A couple of nice corners. Some rollers. Coming up into some faster corners now. Coming on through.
Now, if you're listening to this and consider yourself to be a keen bean mountain biker or cyclist, then Forestry England membership might just be for you. As you've heard, Forestry England sites have some of the best mountain biking and cycling trails in the country, and there's a lot of them. Over 2,500 kilometres, in fact. So membership really is a gateway to a year of incredible journeys on two wheels all over the country. You can check out Forestry England's website to find out more about the different trails at different forests. And of course, by becoming a member, you're also helping Dan and the team to keep building and maintaining these trails for everyone to enjoy. Find out more about Forestry England membership at the end of this episode. Now, a lot of the work at the Forest of Dean Cycle Centre is that of volunteers. The Dean Trail Volunteers are a group of people, all ages, all backgrounds, who dig in, quite literally, to make their local space a better place. The day we visited, lots of the team were out putting the finishing touches to a brand new trail, so Dan nicked our microphone, bit cheeky, and wandered off into the forest to have a chat.
Yeah, hi, I'm Andy Davis. I'm the dig coordinator for Dean Trail Volunteers. We are on the new section of the Free Miners Trail, and the big project for 2024 is going to be one of the big projects is the revamp of the red cross-country Free Miners Trail that we've got at the Forest of Dean Cycle Centre. So you've actually come on a pretty exciting day. So this is we're just handing over from the contractors who did all the heavy machinery to the volunteer group, which is us. So we've got 15 volunteers here today who are now doing the final finishing touches to this section the first section of trail. So it's quite an exciting day from our point of view. Having a big team and working on a great bit, a bit of trail that's looking really quite good.
So there's a team up behind us, there's a team down in front of us, so you can hear the background noise of whacking and spade work and things going on. But it is looking amazing, and the reason for revamping this bit of trail, because the trail was here originally, but now you're in the process of revamping it. Because if anyone who's come to the Forest of Dean will know about the Blue Trail, the Verderers Trail is an award-winning, top flight blue class cross-country trail, and the Free Miners was a bit of a mismatch. So we had the Free Miners Extension, Free Miners Adit. There was 3 different trails. It was a bit confusing. It was, on our point of view, it was a nightmare to maintain. Huge sections of boggy trail and all that sort of stuff. So what we wanted to do was bring the quality up to the same level as the Verderers Blue. So we're going to have a red trail that's going to be a real step up. So one of the big things that we do at Forest of Dean is the progression. So we're always on trying to get people to move along at a steady pace, from the blues, from the greens to the blues, to the blues to the reds, and the reds to the blacks. And this particular bit of red trail, the way people ride now and the equipment progression and so on has changed from when it first went in over a decade ago, I guess. So the way people ride has changed, so their expectations of the trail is different as well. So I guess you reshaping it, changing the flow.
We're getting some. So I think it's very important for us to keep it a natural feeling, but people do want a bit more excitement and a bit more flow. So we're working very hard on this section to make it feel like. So you've done a big climb up the hill on that side. You've gone past the skills area, so you can do a little bit of playing about and a sort of a qualification. If you're happy on the skills area, then you know the red trail is going to be for you. And then you finish the climb, and then this is your first sort of reward. So I think a lot of the feedback we did about 6 months last year, taking feedback and trying to work out what it is people wanted from the red trail, and a lot of the feedback was, it's a lovely trail, and they love the natural feel and the out there feeling that you get from riding it, but it just didn't have that bang for your buck. There was a lot of slog and not a lot of payback. So this section is very much about the payback.
I mean, and it's amazing. We're here midweek in a cold time of year on a cold day, and we've got 15 people.
I was warm doing the work a minute ago.
Now you're cooling down. And one thing that really strikes me about this team is it's really varied. And I know this isn't necessarily about trail building, but there's a whole demographics
here. No, we've got a good, for a Wednesday, we've got a couple of homeschool kids who they come along, and this is part of their sort of education package that they've got, which is really nice. We've got a lot of, there's a fair amount of grey head for 40, 50-year-olds. Because this is the Wednesday session, so we have two sessions, one on the Wednesday and one on the Saturday. So the Saturday tends to be a bit of a slightly different mix. So, and we're always looking at different ways of getting different groups in and involved, because it's really what it's all about.
I love the Forest of Dean. It's such a great way to spend your weekend. And by the way, if you've got a couple of family members who live trail riding, but it's not quite your thing, don't worry. They've got a great cafe as well. The team and I sat down after a morning on the trails, tucked into some proper lovely jacket potatoes, tuna mayonnaise in case you're wondering, and it was brilliant. Highly recommend. Speaking of the team, this episode was produced and edited by Adam Stoner with help from Rebecca Small. Research by Kieran Snedden and Dominic Head. My name is Bex Lindsay. Thanks for listening to the Forestry England podcast. This episode was all about trail riding, and this has been season 1. Together, we've travelled the length and breadth of the country and met some incredible people. In episode 1, we met Helen and Sharifa, who spoke to us about health and well-being benefits of forests.
There's a lovely quote I saw. I went to work at Cannock Chase, and there's a lovely little quote I took a picture of, and it says that if you feel like you're losing everything, just remember that trees lose their leaves every winter, but they still stand tall and wait for better days to come.
In episode 2, we spoke to Hazel and Shona, 2 people turning their landscape into art.
Obviously the trees are here now and they're living, but there's links back to obviously history, but also the world and people who were involved with trees for lots of different reasons, over their lifetimes. And there's all these different threads and different journeys.
Then, chased by a snowstorm, we hopped across to Dalby Forest in Yorkshire, where we found out about critters and creatures that we share the forest with, before heading to Ellie in Thetford and James in Cannock, who told us all about their great balancing acts.
You can see as soon as something is unlocked, the stuff that's been sitting there in the seed bank comes through. So we've got rushes over here, we've got heather over there, we've got various heathland plants popping through. There's things like nightjar that really rely on having this, things like adders, they really need this sort of habitat.
The best way that I've had it described to me is it's a bit like sitting in the middle of a spider's web. You have all these different threads that are pulling on your attention that you're trying to balance.
We really want our forests to thrive and for everyone who comes here to enjoy themselves, but most of all I just consider myself lucky to have this job.
And we finish here in Gloucestershire, on the border of Wales, with yet more tips and tricks on how you can enjoy the forest. So, alone or with a family, and with this podcast as your companion, or maybe just listening to the sound of the trees, I hope you're full of inspiration. Whether you're a weekly wanderer or you're just taking your first steps into the forest this weekend, thank you for listening. And remember that a Forestry England membership is such a good way to support the amazing work that Forestry England do to care for the nation's forests. Their future is our future too. You can find out more about membership at forestryengland.uk. See you among the trees.